Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Amy Haddon, and I lead marketing and communications globally for SE Advisory Services. We're happy to invite you today to talk more about the workforce of the future. If you joined the plenary earlier today, you would have heard some of our thoughts about that at Schneider Electric and with some of our partners, but I know that much of that conversation was really focused on how AI and technology is really going to affect careers in the trades. Our session is going to focus more on professional impact for the white-collar workforce, and specifically how agentic AI is going to reshape most of our careers. And we want to talk a little bit more about how it's affecting our work within Schneider Electric Advisory Services, and really examine not how AI will help us as a technological tool, but how it is ultimately really going to redesign roles, workflows, how decisions are made, how authority is exercised, and how we learn together. So I'm joined by two of my esteemed colleagues, Steve Wilhite, who is the leader of our energy and sustainability practice within SE Advisory Services, and our lead data scientist, Dr. Jeff Willert. So we're going to jump right into it. Jeff, let's start with just a quick level set for everyone in the room. I've mentioned now agentic AI. I want to just make sure everyone knows exactly what that is.
Of course, Amy. So apologies to anybody who came to my talk yesterday and has to get this lecture twice.
You can suffer through it or...
Basically.
Okay.
Yeah. So we talk about three different types of AI within our business. So traditional AI is one that we've been familiar with for many years now. You interact with it every single day, whether you know it or not. A lot of this is rule-based or symbolic manipulation. But these tools have a very narrow focus for a very specific task. For example, every time you open your email, you've got things in your junk folder. That's a machine learning algorithm understanding the difference in properties or patterns between email you care about and email you don't care about. Every time you log into Netflix, there's a new recommendation, or Pandora, or any of these tools. You see this all the time. We also use traditional AI for forecasting or anomaly detection, something that I'm sure we all interact with on a regular basis. About 3 years ago, we were introduced to generative AI. ChatGPT exploded onto the scene, as did some of these very cool new image generation tools. And so generative AI can create new things like stories, pictures, music, help you draft an email. And of course, when we say new, really what it's done is it's learned based on patterns in all the text that's ever been written by humanity across the internet. And so it infers what you want to do based on those patterns and kind of extrapolates a little bit. So this is a really powerful form of AI, but it's still very reactive. It's not out there doing anything for you. It's kind of just waiting behind the scenes until you ask it to help. Agentic AI is a much more proactive and constructive AI that can help pursue objectives independently of the user. And so we'll talk more about this over the course of the session, but agentic AI is a large language model as a brain with access to tools that can actually go do things. It can query your energy data. It can execute a web search. So it's really powerful, and it can synthesize all this information and actually do things with it. So it's a really more powerful form of AI than we've ever been experiencing before.
Thank you so much, Jeff. So I'm going to ask what I hope is a provocative question, and maybe one that's on the minds of everyone in this room. Are robots coming for our jobs? Just kidding. But I do think we all probably have a question about that. And in terms of the autonomous nature of agents, are we really ready in our workplaces for agents to start making decisions and handling things that humans have historically handled?
Okay, first, there's been a robot coming for my job for a long time, probably decades. And we'll figure it out eventually. But in all seriousness, when I think about the decision-making aspect of things as a leader, we can have some fun with this session, I assume, and kind of go back and forth on different things. But I don't know about you, but I get to Friday in the week, and I'm like decision fatigue. I'm done. The last thing I want to do is figure out where I'm going to go to eat dinner on Friday night. I just want that decision made for me. I go out to dinner and I sit there with my wife and say, you know, The person waiting at the table comes to the table, and I just say, you decide, okay? And so there is an element of decision fatigue that all of us as leaders experience. And then you got to say, why? What are those decisions? Because there are big decisions you're making and then a whole host of other decisions that is very laborious and a pain in the neck to have to make. So when I think about autonomous agents, and we'll get into this discussion a little bit, coming in and stepping in and taking over some of those types of decisions that cause me decision fatigue, I'm all for it. And so I want to look at how those autonomous agents can augment the other elements of the leadership characteristics and traits that I might bring to the table, whether it's at home or at work or wherever that venue might be, and say, how can we make my decision-making much more effective and efficient?
So what I just heard is that Jeff needs to build you a dinner decision agent.
I'd love it.
Yeah.
Oh,
And there are some, I think.
he's been making me work late nights, so it's an after-work thing.
Yeah.
No, I 100% agree, and as a leader, I'm already kind of practicing this in a way, and so is Steve. We all have people that we employ to help us make these decisions. I can't make every decision on behalf of the many data scientists that work for me. There are some decisions that they're enabled to make, they're empowered to make, and there are other things that they want to get my feedback on. It's going to be a very kind of natural mirroring with agents. There are some things, and this list is going to grow as agents get more powerful over time. There are some decisions that I'm okay with them making. If they have all the appropriate context, the information that's required to make the decision, and it's a pretty black and white decision, let them make it. Also think about the impact of the decision. What goes wrong if the wrong decision is made? And that's similar to how we act as leaders. We don't want to make every decision.
Yeah, thank you guys for both of those perspectives. So I want to surface what I think is another fear, and I'll just own for myself, it's a fear. Part of what I love in my job is getting to act as a human creatively and using my own ingenuity. What's your view on the new workforce of the future in a landscape where collaboration between humans and agents is going to become much more commonplace? Can we peacefully coexist in that future?
Take it first, but I think the answer is absolutely. And aspects of my job have been displaced or have changed. So being a data scientist, being an AI engineer, one of my jobs is to write code. AI doesn't just magically appear, we have to build it. And there are plenty of new tools out there that are helping me write code faster, more efficiently, and often higher quality than I would have produced by myself. And so we're getting massive speed ups in terms of, just the way that I work. I actually love it. I'm not an AI engineer because I like writing code. I'm an AI engineer because I like solving problems. And so these tools are helping me get at what I love most about the job. I'm still spending time coding, but that time is spent much more efficiently.
Yeah, so just a couple of quick comments on that. It's interesting because I also had a conversation with our CTO who for our business unit, Dan, and he said he's got a couple different types of development, or let's call it coders. I hope that doesn't offend anybody, but people writing code. And he has some folks writing code in his team that is their creative output. Okay, much like maybe Amy on your team in a marketing sense, the creative output is the creative piece. So for those systems engineers, their art is writing code. And yet for other systems engineers, their art is the value that's being created and that they see come to fruition. So there are kind of two categories there. And there was a great quote I heard just a few weeks ago in Europe in a European meeting, where the individual said there is clearly a group of people when we're thinking about the workforce of the future that are worried about their jobs. But what we underestimate is due to AI, by the way. Okay, so worry about their jobs due to AI. But there's a whole host of other people, and it might be a bigger set of people that are more worried about AI robbing them of their purpose and their mission. So I think sometimes we confuse those things. And for all of us as leaders, we should really think about that because it's not just, there is a category that I'm worried about. Am I going to feed my family? Am I going to have the means to live and survive from a job perspective? But there's a whole other cast that, is this going to take away my purpose? So for that developer that writes code as their creative output and their creative element, they might have they're worried about AI replacing their coding and robbing them of their creative and their purpose. Does that make sense to folks? And so I think we have to be thinking about that as this evolves and dealing with that issue and trying to be discerning. So Dan's response is, the folks that are using the coding as their creative output, they probably have more to worry about than those who are focused on the creative output being, how am I solving the problem for the client through the use of these tools? I hope that makes sense. But I think that's a distinction that we have to be very conscious about and intentional about. How do we approach it?
Yeah, thank you, Steve. And that's a great segue into my next question, which is that you're really alluding to how we're beginning to build agents into our workflows, right? And so we're really starting to experience the integration of human and machine, what we call collaborative intelligence. And as the consulting practice of Schneider Electric, that's going to have implications for our own workforce as well as for our clients. And so I'd love for you both to talk a little bit about some of these early lessons that we've learned as we've begun introducing agentic AI into our own work and how that ultimately is going to drive value.
Yeah. So I'll do it first. From a technology perspective, just like anything, you need practice. And so when ChatGPT came out 3 years ago, we made a very intentional decision to enable our workforce to get access to that tool. A lot of companies said, no, danger, we're not doing it. We took a slightly different approach. We recognized that we couldn't have every employee going out to chatgpt.com and just entering proprietary information or client data. So we went and hosted our own internal Copilot using our secure connection with Microsoft Azure, and put this in the hands of all of our analysts, all of our leaders.
Over 1,000 people.
Yeah, and so very quickly we had tons of people using this every day. And that, we learned a lot. We got a bunch of ideas from different places in the organization. So it was teaching people how to use the tools, but it was also teaching us as a technology team how to build with these tools. So fast forward, 8 months after that, we were building Resource Advisor Copilot, this tool that you could interact with your energy management, sustainability data, ask questions like, what were my emissions last year? Or, can you explain the difference between Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 emissions? And we learned a lot in that process as well. And it really set up the foundation for what we're trying to build now around agentic AI. You don't jump from 0 to 60. You have to accelerate. And that's what we've been doing over the last 3 years, based on 20 years of industry expertise and many years of developing AI applications in more the traditional AI sense. But we got a very good foundation to build on.
Yeah, so a couple things I want to add to it. We had to approach it with a spirit of humility, by the way, and learning. I think the foundation of learning is humility. So if you go in thinking you know it all, you're going to make a ton of mistakes. And I feel like I make a lot of those mistakes quite frequently. So that's why we said, let's get it in the hands of as many people in our organization as we possibly could in a controlled, constrained type of environment that would allow freedom of thought and ideas. How many are people familiar with the MIT study that came out about just recently, about the 95% of that AI is not producing the returns, 95% of them are failing, only 5% are succeeding? Yeah, if there's anybody from MIT in the room, maybe I should just check that real quick. Okay, so I don't like that because it underestimates the learning that took place in the 95% that failed. So what they didn't take into account in the study, from what I can tell, is how much the value of the 5% successes outweighed the cost of the 95% of failure. And also the rate of the phenomenal rate of decline of the 95% failure rate versus the rate of increase of the successes and the use cases. Had we not deployed it the way Jeff described within our own organization, the use cases and ideas wouldn't have been coming out. If we told people you can only come out with ideas that are going to work, and that are going to be successful, how many ideas do you think we would have gotten? I mean, it would have been a stunningly small subset in that equation, and we would not have started on the journey. Do I have time to give a quick example?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So I see that clock going, and it's really hard on me, just so you know. There's the ADD element that's taking place. So as Jeff said, we started on this agentic AI approach. Jeff and his team started designing agents that would be deployed beneath the surface where our clients wouldn't see it, okay? And I'm going to give you a simple example.
Not to hide it.
Not to hide it, but to test it and see how it worked, okay? And maybe hide it. No, but if you are on our Resource Advisor platform today, then you are already experiencing agentic AI, whether you realize it or not, okay? One part of our business, we're taking 1 million energy invoices into our systems every month on behalf of our clients. So those clients are capturing a lot of their Scope 1 and Scope 2 data from those energy invoices, but they're also multi-purposing that data and information to go out and, say, hedge their energy prices from a risk perspective. They're using it to make decisions about energy efficiency. They're using it to make decisions about their carbon footprint and actions to be taken. Okay, so they're multi-purposing the use of all that data and information. 1 million a month. 5% of them roughly kick out as anomalies, either errors on the bill, mistakes, bad meter reads, all kinds of stuff. Roughly 5%. So 50,000 a month. The 50,000 a month, generally, in some way, shape, or form, have to be touched by a human hand. We apply reinforcement learning, we apply robotic process automation, machine learning, et cetera. We do all the traditional stuff, but we still have to touch it with a human being. The amount of time to make the resolution of that data runs between 12 and 15 person days, okay? So business days before it's resolved. I know that sounds like a long time, but there's often a lot of interaction that has to take place back and forth, blah, blah, blah. It takes time. That hurts the client in multiple ways. One, they don't have completely accurate data in a timely fashion that they're making business decisions. Case in point, Russia invades Ukraine, energy markets get super volatile. They got to make decisions about what they're hedging. And if they're making that decision on bad data, that's a bad decision. Okay, so the data is critical and it's foundational to everything else that we're doing. You've probably heard that before here over the last day or so. Okay, Jeff's team goes and designs a handful of agents. By the way, we're going to come back to the agents' names probably.
We are.
But as a preview, these agents have names internally. We have an anomaly agent. Her name is Anna. We have a registration agent. His name is Reggie. There's names of these agents, and they sit on org charts, but we'll come back to it, I'm sure. So he started deploying these agents in a test environment. A week, 2 weeks in, the agents are running at about 56% accuracy. Within a month in the test environment, the agents had improved to excess of 90%. Within a few weeks after that, 6 weeks-ish, they're running at 99.99% accuracy. And the amount of time that took the 12 to 15 days to get that data in the system and accurate has gone from that to seconds and minutes. No longer measure the resolution of that data in terms of even hours. It's down to seconds or minutes. The value creation for a company that's having to make decisions on that data is astounding. Okay, so those are now in production within the platform and the system, and clients I'm sure they're seeing the impact of that. We haven't been as public about that, but those agents are active. Now, as a leader, was I interested in relinquishing decision-making to an autonomous agent that was accurate to the degree of 56%? I don't think anybody here in this room would feel really good about that and delegating authority to an employee at a 50%, 60%, 56% accuracy rate. But 99.99, I'm done. I'm done. My decision fatigue just got lessened. I don't have to be involved in that decision because I know the agent is working to take care of that. Is that resonate? It's a simple example, but one that came from this effort of our teams democratizing the use of some of these tools in such a way that this was elevated as a potential way of dealing with it. Sorry, I went on.
Not at all, because I think it's very relevant to my follow-up question, which is that, as consultants, we're a high-touch business, right? Our clients want our expertise. They want a human connection. And so, yes, we're creating value, but I'd love for us to unpack a little bit the responsibility that we feel to our employees, to our clients, and then ultimately, we get a lot of questions about, you guys are sustainability consultants, and yet you're all in on AI. How do you justify the energy demand, the emissions footprint? So, Steve, any reactions to that sort of responsibility question? Like, what does that really mean for our clients and our employees and the planet ultimately?
Well, I want Jeff to comment on this too. But first of all, we're not just tossing our client data out into the to the web. So data privacy and data trust is top of the list, and including cyber, et cetera. So that's at the very top, and we just can't exist in an untrustworthy fashion, or environment. I think that the other element of this is at what point you all as an organization or in your work are going to begin to relinquish that control. Okay, there's a certain security I have in control. And so some of this is learning to trust a teammate that may be a digital teammate in such a way to come alongside me and help enhance my decision-making, enhance the human intelligence. So there's that kind of element, that exists there as well in dealing with the sense of control and the law and the sense of trust. And where can I base that trust on? I'm curious about your reaction to that too, Jeff.
Well, absolutely. And so from a more technical standpoint, accuracy is key. And Steve mentioned that progression. That progression can only happen if you measure. And we're not measuring just accuracy, we're measuring it across a variety of dimensions. Efficiency in terms of the number of tokens we're sending to large language models, the number of times we have to call a large language model. We have to measure against, make sure it's not hallucinating. We have to make sure that it's accurately using the information to ground the model in fact. And then, of course, and as you brought this up too, the sustainability aspect of it is very important to us. And so at Schneider Electric, we employ something called frugal AI. In short, it means use the right tool for the problem. No need to use agentic AI if I need to add two numbers together, right? Plenty of traditional ways to do that don't incur such a big carbon footprint. And so one of the reasons we shared the traditional generative and agentic AI slide was so that we can actually differentiate between these things. The carbon footprint typically does increase going from traditional to generative to agentic AI. And so not everything needs to be an agent. Not everything needs to be AI. I'm very busy, so I'm happy when projects come and they're not AI. And then there are other decisions that we can make, other levers we can pull. And for example, the US has a fairly dirty grid compared to other places in the world. Where we live in Louisville is actually one of the least clean grids in the world. However, we're a French company. France has one of the cleanest grids. And so by deploying models in other areas, we can actually limit our carbon footprint dramatically. It could be a 25x difference between deploying in Eastern US versus France or Norway. So we need to keep all of these things in our mind at all times when we're making these decisions.
At the same time, recognizing the limitations that may exist in some of those countries from a data privacy and the ease of transporting that data in and out of different zones and different countries. So you have to really look at the whole equation. By the way, the other element of this, I'd say, and just to dovetail a bit, all of us here in this room rely on data to make decisions. But as leaders, it's never perfect. So I'll use myself as an example. My gut steps in maybe earlier than most. So I get to a certain point in my head where I think I've got enough data. Okay, I'm extrapolating from the data I have, and I'm going a little bit with my gut. Jeff is probably at the other end of the spectrum. In God we trust, all others must bring data. Okay, so there's kind of maybe a bookend here. But the use of these tools and can take my gut a lot, can push my gut further, if you know what I mean. In other words, that data is going to get me much closer to more perfect information than me maybe calling the shot at 50%. When okay, I feel good about that level of data or confidence, and my gut can carry it the rest of the way. I get there a lot quicker with the collaborative intelligence and the digital tools and teammates alongside that actually are going to make my decisions, I think, much better in the long run. So
I think there's two other things that we were discussing yesterday that I think are highly relevant. One is the auditability of the decisions that are being made by the agents. And then the second is that I think when we hear the word autonomous, we think just a free-for-all, right? That the agents are just out there doing and acting, and that's obviously not what we mean. We mean that the humans still have oversight, still create the boundaries, and that ultimately it's that energy is freed up for more of that higher level thinking and strategic work that agents are not capable of. So Jeff, maybe you could.
Yeah, so let's start with the auditability. This is something that came up in a conference we were at about 6-8 months ago. And they said, well, how do I know what the agent's doing? And I said, well, that's easy. We can record every single step that the agent makes, every single tool call that they use. We can store the reasoning process. And as we're building these agents, if it's making bad decisions, we can pinpoint exactly why. I don't think we can do that with most of our human employees.
Steve, can you tell us when you make those gut decisions?
No, I actually am a perfect case child for this one. Somebody will come to me and say, how'd you make that decision again? I had some data and felt the right way to go. That's not true with the agent. So in the agent process that I described earlier about the utility invoices, we can track, okay, the agent chose to go to the rate library here, the agent chose to go to this here. All the different toolboxes that exist is completely auditable. Now, I don't know how many in this room are involved with any CSRD type of reporting, ESG reporting, that type of thing. But for ESG reporting in other parts of the world to be elevated to the same level as financial reporting, and the auditability required for the ESG reports that are taking place, our company is exposed to that, given our heavy European exposure. And it is critical that it is fully, you can much more seamlessly audit an agent and the work and the decisions an agent's making than you can Steve, by a long shot. And so the enhanced auditability of this is creating a huge opportunity and benefit for those of us that are in that world.
Yeah. Jeff, anything else you want to say around boundaries and sort of the human oversight element?
Yeah, so, human oversight, but also partnership. And Steve alluded to this a little bit. It's not AI just doing everything, making decisions by itself. Each agent has a very narrow scope of what it can do, what tools it can use, and it can't really exceed beyond that scope. And for some of our agents, if you come see our demo station in the hub, they're working on behalf of a user. And so when they're doing their work, they have the exact same permissions for data that the user they're working on behalf of does. And so we can very carefully scope what the agents can do. And as we build more and more agents, and as we build more trust, and as we put our stamp of approval that they're meeting an exceptional level of accuracy, superhuman level of accuracy, we can allow them to make more decisions. But we also build in human-in-the-loop components. There are some decisions where we don't even want the agent to make the decision, right? We want to see the information before the decision is made. We might want to have a discussion with other leaders as to what to do about that decision. And so it's finding the right balance for each problem. Some simple problems, let the agent make the decision. If we're talking about a decarbonization roadmap that we're about to invest $30 million in or $100 million in, we probably want to discuss that with all the appropriate stakeholders to make sure that the decisions that are being made fit in with our desires.
At least before it files a mortgage,
Right.
for me on my behalf. It's interesting because one, what Jeff's saying is true. For every, and by the way, the right way to approach agentic work as technology platform or software tech stack, like what we were talking about within our business, is not to say there's one size fits all across this room. It's going to be very user specific based on your needs, your desired user experience, your personal and company's risk profile associated with that. So if it's not designed that way from an AI native up, it's going to be a problem because it's not going to work with a one size fits all. The other thing I'd say that's going to be super interesting to watch over time is your user preferences and your risk tolerance is going to shift. And we all need to understand that right out of the gate, that it's going to change and it's going to shift over time. Meaning what you are comfortable with today with an agent making a decision will be different than a week from now or a month from now or a year from now. Going to be very different. And we have to be ready for that. And as leaders, we also have to be ready with the change management associated with that, with our own teams, with the people in our business, because that kind of risk tolerance and approach and what we're comfortable with and not comfortable with, where we need more controls or less controls, is going to become a critical issue.
Along those lines, we were alluding earlier to our new digital employee org chart with Anna and Reggie. What kind of skills are going to be needed in this new future where we're managing digital employees in the same way we might be managing real human employees? And what are the softer skills, maybe, Steve, from a change management perspective, and even how we engage now as humans together? What kind of skills do we anticipate that our team will use, that we expect that our clients will need?
Yeah, so I mean, the emotional safe space of an agent's going to change. I'll be really good at that part.
It's true.
But it is kind of interesting because as a leader, we're always trying to delegate authority, if you will, or enable our teams in different ways. And some of those same soft skills about knowing when to do that with an agent will also be necessary. And so I think one of the panels in the plenary session, the one about the changing workforce, in that panel, if you had a chance to see that, was pretty good in terms of how they're trying to train the workforce of the future of electricians and skilled trade on more of the soft skills. And by the way, they're doing that because what the skills, the skilled trades necessary, the soft skills on the people side. But we can't limit that soft skill nature to just the people side of its skilled trades. It's going to be necessary for some of those same skill sets to enter into the digital realm as well, for us to be conscious of how we're leading as we think about what we're going to delegate and how we're going to fully utilize a digital workforce and a digital org chart. By the way, and then we'd be fully, I'd be safe saying that there's going to be a requirement for collaborative intelligence throughout this.
For sure.
Yeah, and one quick note. I mean, just like I'm responsible for my people and the output that they provide, we'll have managers of the agents. We might not think of that in the same way as a human manager-employee relationship, but someone has to take ownership for how that agent is performing. And so we are constantly measuring how they're performing, especially around those agents that deal with invoices. We have dashboards that show us every single day how many are being processed, what the accuracy is, how many are getting flagged for follow-up. And there's multiple entities that are ultimately responsible. It's a technology decision, but it's also a subject matter expert decision as to, when do we need to step in? And so we already have within our organization people who are responsible for ensuring the outputs of agents. And that's a kind of new job category that didn't exist, just a year ago.
I've heard you refer to it more as context engineering, right?
Yeah, so we everybody talked about prompt engineering, and that's a fine term. It's basically, how do you ask a large language model for what you want it to do? But now what we're doing with agents, it's really about crafting the context. Understanding what decision needs to be made or what action needs to be taken, and providing all of the right information. And in a sense, you can think about it like bringing a new employee on board that's super smart, but might not understand the minutia of your space. And so, giving it some rules as to how to make decisions in this space versus another. So we might process invoices a little bit differently in France because of some of the ways that they're billed. And so being able to add that context, it's not something you can just get off the shelf with ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini. So it's being able to take our subject matter expertise, having done this work for 20 plus years, and take some of that out of the heads of our experts and communicate it to the agents.
Great.
One other thing I want to comment on here, one of the speakers this morning also referenced in industrial revolution and different phases of the industrial revolution. So we've all been through this before, okay? At Schneider, our lighthouse factory, the World Economic Forum lighthouse factory in Lexington, Kentucky, great example. It's decades old. And that facility today is held up as a standard of efficiency, automation, And when you walk into that facility, if anybody's ever had a chance to be in that plant, by the way, what that plant produces and what we produce overall is in 4 out of 10 homes in this country. So you're all experiencing the benefit of that lighthouse automation and factory. But you walk in there today, it's far fewer. It's robotic, it's automation, it's current, it's state of the art. Yet the place is decades old, and so it's far more energy efficient than we could have ever imagined even 10 years ago. So we've gone through these revolutions before, and some of that muscle memory will be necessary for this revolution, because I think this is going to be even bigger. It's going to be more dramatic across the board.
In my household, we say we can't put the genie back in the bottle, so we have to figure out how to work with the genie.
What I say in my household is you won't lose your job to AI, but you'll lose your job to somebody else that's using AI. Right. I'm sure everybody in the room has probably, heard that phrase.
Well, I also want to say that in addition to human managers, we're also going to have agentic managers. And we're really excited to introduce you to one of those managers today. Her name is Sarah, and she is our lead agent. And she will be the lead agent in our Resource Advisor Plus software, which will be launching to the market in January. So we're really excited to introduce you. Hope you're ready to meet her. Steve, you ready to introduce Sarah?
Well, just one quick comment before. This is not, it's our first public-facing agent. We shared this yesterday in another session. So for some of you, you might be seeing this again. But keep in mind, Sarah has an org chart, essentially, of agents that have been in production and are working. But to give a little sneak peek, let's give her.
Yeah, ready?
Sarah, are you there?
Hi, Steve. Hi, everyone.
Sarah, tell us a little about yourself.
I'm Sarah, your lead AI agent. I bring the expertise of SE Advisory Services directly to you, automating workflows and proactively spotting opportunities. With specialized AI agents backing me up, it's like adding an experienced team to your org chart.
Sarah, tell us a little bit about how you do your work and how you go about it, and you start wherever you want.
Let's start with one of the most common headaches in sustainability: transforming business activity data into regulatory-ready carbon data. It's manual, fragmented, and really technical. Here's how I simplify the process. I begin with something you already have: your energy invoices. My agents and I transform these into precise carbon data, extracting consumption figures, verifying data on the invoice, looking for anomalies, intelligently matching emission factors, and building your complete emissions baseline. No more chasing spreadsheets or second-guessing what's missing, just reliable, fully auditable carbon intelligence you can trust. With a reliable carbon data foundation, I help establish emissions reduction targets and map out strategic initiatives to reach them. I also surface pathways to achieving them, including low-cost, high-quality, and rapid progress scenarios. These roadmaps provide different optimizations for cost, emissions impact, and speed of implementation to show you how you can accomplish your decarbonization objectives within the constraints of your business.
So, Sarah, we all know that sustainability is a team sport, and it's challenging around collaborating across complex organizations, time zones, different large sizes of organizations. Tell us how you go about that.
Collaboration is built right into how I work. When it comes to cross-functional teams, I make sure everyone sees the appropriate context instantly, so there's no chasing stakeholders for updates. I also support your users at the site level, delivering guidance on unfamiliar terms, flagging anomalies, and helping verify the data they upload. That builds trust across the organization, from HQ to every facility in an enterprise.
Okay, so Sarah, let's go off script. Just a couple of curveballs. One, the complexity around some of the reporting frameworks is a real challenge. Two, everybody's faced with supply chain decarbonization. Hit both of those topics for me.
I can help with any of the major reporting compliance frameworks. Just choose the one you need, and I'll draft responses based on your data. From there, I guide you through the details, flagging gaps, validating accuracy, and suggesting improvements so the final product is complete, consistent, and ready to share with confidence. Now let's shift to supply chain decarbonization and how I can help you scale your efforts. I help you send invitations to suppliers and track their registration as they join the program. As tasks are completed, like confirming details or uploading data, your to-do list updates automatically. From there, participation and progress across the supply chain are visible in one place. In the end, it all adds up to this: fundamentally changing how you work by connecting to your data, your facilities, and the regulations you face worldwide. Thanks for having me, Steve. I'll get back to what I'm really built for, working quietly behind the scenes. Over to you.
Thanks, Sarah. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of a sneak peek above the water and above the surface as to what's happening below the surface and below the water. If you stop by the SE advisory area, you can see a little bit more about, how that actually works and get into more detail in the demos and that. But the market is, our clients will be exposed to Sarah above the water within the next few weeks. So that'll be happening. But keep in mind, the team of agents underneath are already active and already working, and there will be massively more agents as we consider all the use cases that are coming from within our business in terms of how we can deliver greater value to our clients.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Sarah. We have time for a couple of questions. If anybody has one, we've got one up front.
Make sure we get a microphone so that we can get these.
We've got it right. She's coming.
Raise your hand. Hello, my name is Tanya Hicks. I'm the president and CEO of Power Solutions. I'm an electrical contractor and a supplier for Schneider since 2018. And my question is about agents for the people in the field. My son has assigned agents to everyone just to come up with better SOPs and stuff like that. But then I found out that they were using the agents to do their daily reports, the guys in the field. And so I didn't know if that was like cheating or what. But so will Schneider have AI agents to help us like with sourcing product? Because now we currently speak to real live people in the field sometime when we looking at a part or need to identify a retrofit or something like that. So will you be at that level as well?
So I have to believe this is gonna continue. So within SE Advisory Services, contained in this business is not the field service piece of the work, but I can almost guarantee that the agentic approach will augment the human intelligence on the ground as well. But Jeff?
But we do have, within our efficiency practice, we are sending people out to do site surveys, and they're now using tablets that are taking pictures, capturing information, that are leveraging different types of AI, and we'll be using agentic AI to help synthesize those reports. And no, it's not cheating. I mean, I didn't walk to Las Vegas. I flew in an airplane, right? And so, we've got to use the tools that are available to us. Now, to be fair, got to check those reports. I mean, we have to gain trust that it's doing the right thing. And if we're going to be making decisions as to how to source material or, how we're going to build a new extension, we want to make sure that information's correct. But no, it's not cheating.
But if we're talking about your son at school, okay, that's a different story, Tanya. I mean, then we might be cheating.
Great question. We probably have time for one more. Anybody else? I have about 100 questions, but I'll just go off of what we just heard. So in her case and in Schneider's case, how do you look at where the data is coming from, how to keep it secure, how much you're balancing that, like how much are you using only internal data versus third party?
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. Good question. Jeff?
Yeah, so first of all, security is paramount. No ifs or buts about it, right? It has to be secure. It's core to our business. And so we are only leveraging secure connections to large language models. We are not using any models that wouldn't keep our data secure or would train on the information we're putting into it. We've made a conscious decision not to train any models on customer data for a couple reasons. It creates all kinds of privacy headaches. Second, I don't really think we need to do it given other techniques for inserting that information. But to the other part of your question, there are many different types or buckets of data that are being ingested into Sarah. And so some of that is our proprietary knowledge. Some of it is our internal benchmarks. Some of it is our internal emission factor library or our pricing forecasts. So there is a wide variety of data that's all coming together to make these informed decisions.
If I could piggyback on that, Jeff, I think that is a significant competitive differentiator for Resource Advisor Plus, because a lot of our competitors have good quality software, but it's not built on a foundation of more than 20 years of direct advisory experience with our clients. And our humans are working very closely directly with Jeff and his team to ensure that those agents are really being built with that expertise from the ground up, because ultimately we want to deliver value.
Yeah, the one thing I'd add on that is that even some of the recent software-only players that have emerged in this space in the last few years, they're stuck because they spent a ton of money, invested a ton of money pre-agentic AI. And we are 100% convinced that having an AI native environment and tech stack is going to be far more effective in the long run than trying to essentially slap the latest tools on top of legacy systems. It's not going to operate the same way. We know that firsthand, which is why we jumped on this journey as fast as we could.
Well, I want to thank...
That was only one of your questions, Jennifer, not the other 99, but maybe we could connect with you.
Yeah, I have to grab these guys.
Sure. Is that it?
That is it. So please join me in thanking
Zero.
Steve and Jeff for their time today.